Alright, so combat in Puppet Wars. Let's say that this Death Marshal wants to attack Seamus. Most of the time, combat, you need to be in adjacent space. Some puppets have a special ability that lets them attack at a longer range. So, every puppet has a combat stat, and what that stat tells you is the number of cards you flip when you attack. So let's say the Death Marshal wishes to attack Seamus. He has a combat of 2, so he gets to flip 2 cards from the top of his deck. He gets to pick whichever one he wants to use and discard the rest. So he gets 10 and 12. Let's say he wants to use the 12. Discards the 10. And he compares that number to the defense of the puppet that he's hitting. Seamus has a defense of 6. As long as the card that you flipped equals or is equal to or greater than the defense of the puppet you're attacking, then you've hit. 12 is higher than 6. Seamus has been hit, and he's going to take a rip. A rip is a wound in any other game. Just mark that off on his card. And if he were to get to 0, he'd die. And as you probably just noticed, dry erase works on these. It's better when you don't erase with your finger. So that's the gist of how combat works. Now, you might think that's a little boring because there was no defensive reaction, but there is one in Puppet War, so let's say that these cards are still here. So now let's try that again. The Death Marshal declares an attack on Seamus. Before the Death Marshal flips any cards, Seamus has the chance to dodge. And when you dodge, what you do is you take a card from your hand and you play it. That becomes the puppet's new defense, both the number and the suit. So now the Death Marshal flips his 2 cards and he needs an 11 and a ram. So as you saw before, he got the 10 and the 12. He's going to discard the 10, keep the 12. The 12 easily meets the number, but he still needs the suit. He can now play any number of cards from his hand to attempt to match it. So he looks at his hand and he sees that he has a ram. He has a 2 of rams, so he plays it. And now what he can do, when you play multiple cards for an action like that, you pick the number that you want. He has a 12 and a 2, so he picks the 12 and adds the suit. So what he has here is he has a 12 tome ram. The number that he's trying to get is 11 ram. He's gotten that number. He hits. Seamus would again take a rip. And now you could do that in any order. Let's say he flipped the 2 of rams and he had the 11 in his hand. He could play that to try to meet the number. It doesn't matter which one you play from your hand. And as I said, if Seamus were to get to 0 rips, he would die. Since Seamus is the master, that's the end of the game. But let's say any other puppet had died. Let's say that the Silurid had taken both of his rips and he died. He would go to what's called the scrap heap, or the dead pile. Basically, you just flip it over, find a spot for it on the board, and it becomes an upgrade. The Silurid's upgrade is Frog Legs. It's a piece of the puppet that has been ripped off and that other puppets can pick up and use during the course of the game. And you access that through the player's workbench. So let's say Seamus had a workbench here, and he has Frog Legs in his scrap heap. If a puppet were to get onto that workbench, or any of his workbenches, then it could attempt to attach Frog Legs. How that works is you see this number here, 4 masks. You're going to need a 4 and a mask. So the puppet, let's say the Punk Zombie, wants to attach that. He flips 1 card from the top of his deck, and he needs to meet a 4 and a mask. He got the 7 of masks. The number meets the number, the suit meets the suit, and he got it. Now let's say he didn't get it. Let's say he got the 6 of crows. He could play a mask from his hand and match it just like for attack. So he gets it, so he takes it, and he puts it slightly under his card. And he then gets any abilities that are written on it. So he gets defense +1, and he gets the ability to leap. Now let's say he wanted to use the ability to leap. That's his one action he would use instead of attacking or taking workbench. He announces, I want to leap. Leap says leap, mask. He needs a mask to complete it. So once again, he flips a card from the top of his deck. As long as it's a mask, he has succeeded. This is not a mask, so right now he's not succeeding, but again, he can play any number of cards from his hand. He plays a mask, he succeeds, and he does what leap says. The ability is pretty straightforward. Just do what it says. Leap right there says place this puppet in a space up to 2 spaces away. So you could take the Punk Zombie and place him 2 spaces further away with that action. And actions say any number of things. One more thing I forgot to mention, one more pretty cool game mechanic, is that when a puppet is exhausted, so let's say I've already used my Punk Zombie here. When a puppet's exhausted, in most games what that would mean is you just can't use it again that turn. You're going to have to wait till the end of the 5th animation round when exhaustion clears to use them again. But in Puppet Wars, what you can do, when a puppet is exhausted, when you animate it, it just means it suffers a rip. So even though my Punk Zombie is exhausted, I can still use it, it just gets a little costly. And if it only has one rip left, then it can't animate because that would kill it. That's about it. I also just want to take the end of this video to talk for a minute about some of the good points of this game. One awesome thing is that this board is 1 foot by 1 foot, so you can play this anywhere. Bill in the Gamers Lounge was actually talking about how he played this at Starbucks on one of their little tables. So it's a miniatures game you can play basically anywhere. It's very portable. Also, as I stated earlier, it's 2 to 4 players, and gameplay at 3 and 4 players is fantastic. It's a lot of fun because you can get on other players' workbenches and steal their upgrades, and it was play tested and designed to work with 3 and 4 players, which a lot of miniatures games are not. Also, list building is very versatile. You can use any puppet with any master, and upgrades add a whole element to list building. And it's a lot of fun. So I would really suggest. Also, cats love Puppet Wars.